It started with a wish. Just one. Simple. Innocent. Or at least, that's what I told myself at the time. He looked me straight in the eyes, my husband's best friend, and said, "I have a wish, but I don't know if I should say it." The room was quiet, not because no one else was home, but because I think, in that moment, a part of me already knew what he meant. You know that feeling when you're standing on the edge of something? Not a cliff exactly, but the edge of a decision. And you can feel the pull like gravity, dragging you towards something you shouldn't even want. That's how it started for me. Not with temptation, not with lust, just with a look. And a wish. He didn't touch me. He didn't whisper sweet things in my ear. He just looked at me in a way I hadn't been looked at in years. And when he said it, when he told me he had a wish, I felt my whole body stiffen. Not because I was scared of him, but because I was scared of myself. What do you do? When someone finally sees the parts of you that have gone unnoticed for so long, the parts that were once soft but have since grown quiet, the parts that used to shine but have been dimmed by years of being needed but not wanted, my husband, he wasn't a bad man. He was just busy, tired, always working, always focused on the next project, the next meeting, the next mortgage payment. Somewhere along the way, I just became part of the furniture. I was the woman who made dinner, the woman who handled the kids' school runs, the woman who folded laundry while he sat on the couch, half asleep, half watching a show we both stopped caring about 2 seasons ago. But Dylan, his best friend, he looked at me like I was still someone. Not someone's wife, not someone's mother, just someone. And when he said those words, "I have a wish, I swear," time stopped for a second. Because I knew. Even before he said anything else. I knew what he was about to say. And here's the thing that hurts the most. I didn't walk away. I didn't stop him. I didn't even say, "You shouldn't." I just looked back at him. And I let the moment stretch. Like I wanted it to live longer than it should have. Because for the first time in years, I felt wanted. And I said yes. I said yes to the attention, to the danger, to the fantasy. I said yes to a wish that would turn into a secret. And that secret would turn into a crack. A crack that would split open everything I thought I understood about love, loyalty, and desire. Before we go any deeper, subscribe to Shocking Infidelity Saga. Because here, we don't judge. We just listen. And we tell the truth even when it's messy. If you've ever felt torn between loyalty and longing, if you've ever made a choice you weren't even sure you wanted to make, drop a comment below. I'll be reading, because I need to know I'm not the only one who's ever been pulled in by a wish. I've been married to Mark for 12 years. We met in our 20s, young, eager, hopeful. Back then, everything felt electric. We couldn't keep our hands off each other. We dreamed together, planned together, laughed like best friends. But life doesn't always ask for permission before it changes you. And somewhere between diapers, deadlines, and dinner tables, we drifted. Not dramatically, not with screaming matches or slammed doors, just a quiet, steady unraveling. Mark started working longer hours. He said it was for us, for the kids, for the future. And maybe it was. But somewhere along the way, he stopped noticing me. He'd come home, exhausted, eyes glued to his phone. We'd sit at the same dinner table, but it felt like we lived in different worlds. He was there, but not with me. We have 2 kids, both still in school. Most days I felt like a single parent, carrying the weight of everything while Mark disappeared behind spreadsheets and late-night calls. But I didn't complain. Because how do you explain loneliness when you're surrounded by people? I wasn't cheated on. I wasn't abused. There was no dramatic betrayal, just absence. And silence. That kind of silence, it starts to echo in your bones after a while. Then there was Dylan, Mark's best friend since college, the one who was always there at birthdays, at barbecues, at baby showers. For years, he was just Dylan. Friendly, familiar, harmless. He had this easy way about him. He made everyone laugh, knew how to light up a room. And then, his marriage ended. Suddenly, he was around more. Mark invited him over constantly, maybe to distract him, maybe to help him feel less alone. Funny, isn't it? The very thing that was meant to help him cope ended up pulling me deeper into something I never saw coming. Dylan started opening up to me. He'd hang back after gatherings, helping me clean up. He'd linger in the kitchen, talking about how broken he felt, how hard the nights were. And I listened, because I understood. I knew what it was like to lie in bed and feel like a stranger to the person beside you. We never planned it. There were no secrets at first, just two lonely people talking. But then I noticed the small things. How he remembered my favorite wine. How he'd compliment my hair, even when I hadn't done anything special. How he'd listen, really listen, when I talked. Mark never noticed the little things anymore. But Dylan did. And that became a problem. Because when someone starts seeing you again, when they notice the parts of you that have gone ignored for years, it's hard not to lean in. Even when you know you shouldn't. Even when everything inside you is whispering, this is dangerous. But sometimes, being noticed feels safer than being forgotten. And Dylan? He saw everything. It was a Friday night. The kids were at my sister's for a sleepover. Mark had picked the movie, a thriller he'd already seen twice. And Dylan had dropped by, like he often did lately, with a bottle of wine and a bag of those sea salt chips I liked. He always remembered the little things. We all sat down together, Mark on the couch, me in the middle, Dylan in the armchair. At some point, Mark's head tilted back. His breathing got slower, deeper, and just like that, he was out. I should have nudged him awake, told Dylan it was time to go, but I didn't. I paused the movie, and Dylan just smiled. "This always happens," he said. And I laughed, but inside my chest tightened. We started talking, just small stuff at first. Music we used to love, movies we grew up on. That ridiculous trip we all took to the cabin years ago, where nothing went right. I was relaxed. For the first time in a while, I felt like me again. Not someone's wife, someone's mother, someone's responsibility, just someone. Then the conversation shifted, subtly, naturally. But looking back, I wonder if that moment had been waiting for us all along. He got quiet, stared into his glass like it held something more than wine. "I miss being missed," he said. And just like that, the room felt smaller. I miss waking up next to someone who wants me there. Not out of habit. But because they feel something, I didn't say anything at first. What do you say to that when it sounds like your own thoughts spoken out loud by someone else? I nodded slowly. And then I said, "Yeah, I'd get that." His eyes met mine, and I felt it. That slow, aching pull between two people who weren't supposed to see each other that way. He didn't move, didn't lean in, but his voice dropped a little like we were the only two people in the world. "You've always been my standard," he said, "for what love should have looked like." I froze. I laughed, nervously, tried to lighten the mood. "You're drunk," I joked, though I knew he wasn't. He didn't laugh. He just looked at me, honest, open, broken. "If I had one wish," he said, "it'd be to know what it feels like, to be with someone who actually sees me." My breath caught. Because those words, they weren't just his. They were mine, too. I should have stopped it. I should have changed the subject, stood up, woken Mark, ended the night. But I didn't. I just sat there, staring into the space between us, feeling it stretch and close all at once. Something shifted in the air, unspoken, but heavy. Like a curtain had been pulled back, revealing something we'd both been pretending not to see. We didn't touch. We didn't even move. But in that silence, everything changed. It was just talk. That's what I kept telling myself. We didn't kiss. We didn't touch. We didn't even sit close. It was just words. Words spoken in a moment of vulnerability. But that moment, it played on a loop in my mind for days. His voice, his eyes, that silence that said more than either of us dared to. I tried to shake it off, tried to convince myself it meant nothing. But every time I looked at Dylan after that night, I knew we'd crossed a line. Maybe not one anyone else could see, but I felt it, deep in my chest. And then I started noticing the way he looked at me. Not in a sleazy, obvious way. No. It was subtle, respectful almost, but too long. Like he was memorizing me. At first I ignored it. I smiled, I laughed, pretended we were just friends, like always. But I started changing, not big changes, small ones. When I knew Dylan might be coming over, I'd take a little extra time in the mirror, put on a blouse instead of my usual worn-out tee, run a brush through my hair, swipe on a bit of gloss. Nothing scandalous, just effort. Effort I hadn't made in a long time. And I told myself, it's not like I'm doing anything wrong. I wasn't sneaking around, I wasn't lying. I was just responding to being seen, to being noticed. Everyone needs to feel attractive. Everyone wants to feel wanted, especially after years of blending into the background of their own life. Mark didn't notice the small changes. He didn't comment on the new top or the way I wore my hair differently. But Dylan did. He'd say things like, "You look happy today," or "That color suits you." And it wasn't what he said, it was how he said it. Like he meant it. Like he saw something he appreciated. And I clung to that. Because it felt like breathing after holding it in for too long. But then, I started waiting for it. His compliments, his glances, his texts. I'd feel a flutter when his name popped up on my screen. My heart would race just a little when the doorbell rang and it was him. I started anticipating him, his presence, his energy. And I hated myself for it. But I didn't stop. Because the truth is, it felt good. Too good. I knew I was feeding something dangerous. I knew I was dancing too close to the flame. But I kept stepping forward. And I kept telling myself I haven't done anything wrong. But deep down, I knew the slope I was standing on wasn't flat. It was tilted, slippery, and I was already sliding. I should have stopped inviting him over. I didn't. At first, it was the small things, the kind of things you could brush off if you wanted to. A glance that lingered a second too long. A smile that said more than words ever could. A touch on the wrist, meant to pass the salt, but held just a beat longer than it needed to be. Those moments that used to make me nervous. Now they made my heart beat louder than my own thoughts. And then came the texts. At first, harmless. He'd send a meme or a comment about a movie we talked about. I'd reply with a laugh, an emoji, something casual. But late at night, they changed. He'd text things like, "Can't sleep, thinking too much," or "Wish I had someone to talk to who actually understands." And I'd reply, "Of course I would, because I did understand." Slowly, the tone shifted. The compliments grew softer, more personal. "You looked beautiful today. I wish I'd met you first. You deserve more than just being someone's afterthought." One night, after Mark had gone to bed, I got a message that simply said, "The wish still stands. I just wanted you to know." I stared at it for a long time. Not because I didn't know what it meant, but because I did. My thumb hovered over the screen. I typed a reply, deleted it, typed again, paused. I didn't know how to say, "I think about it too." So I said nothing. But the silence wasn't empty anymore. It was filled with every word we weren't saying. And with every morning Mark left for work, every time he kissed me goodbye out of routine, every time he walked out that front door with his laptop bag and tired smile, I felt it. The guilt. The weight. Not because I'd done something yet, but because I knew where I was headed. And still, I kept walking. One afternoon, when the kids were with my mom, Dylan dropped by to help fix the back door latch. It had been sticking for weeks. Mark kept saying he'd get to it. He never did. Dylan showed up with his toolkit and that same quiet energy. We laughed while he worked, joked about how the door probably just needed someone to care enough. When he finished, I offered him water. We stood in the kitchen, sunlight pouring in through the window, the whole house feeling too quiet, too still. And then he said it. Soft. Measured. Like he'd rehearsed it 100 times in his head. You don't have to say yes to the whole thing. Just one kiss. That's all I ever wanted. I froze. The air between us felt thick. My heart pounded so loud I was sure he could hear it. I looked at him. Really looked. He wasn't playing. He wasn't teasing. He meant it. And in that moment, I stopped thinking. I didn't weigh the consequences. Didn't see the years of marriage. Didn't hear Mark's voice. Didn't picture my kids. All I saw was someone who wanted me. So I leaned in. Our lips met soft, hesitant. But it didn't stay that way, because that kiss didn't end with just lips. It happened the weekend Mark went out of town. A work retreat. 3 days, 2 nights, scheduled months in advance. He kissed me goodbye that Friday morning, told me not to stress, to get some rest while the kids stayed at Grandma's, said he'd call when he landed, and I nodded, smiled, watched him drive away. My heart should have ached, my conscience should have screamed, but all I felt was stillness, like I was standing at the edge of something I knew I couldn't come back from. Dylan came over that evening. He brought wine, said it was for celebration. He'd gotten some freelance gig. We toasted in the living room, talked, laughed, tried to act like things were normal, but they weren't. We both knew that. The energy between us was no longer subtle, no longer hiding behind glances or casual jokes. It had turned into something thick, pulsing, undeniable. He stood up to go at one point, said he should leave, said it wasn't right, and I said, "Then why does it feel like the only thing that is?" He looked at me, and it was all there. The tension, the longing, the ache. And then, there were no more words. The kiss this time was different, not hesitant, not careful. It was neat, raw, and unfiltered. He carried me to the bedroom, the one Mark and I shared, the same sheets, the same pillows, the same room where silence had lived for years. It wasn't slow, it wasn't tender, it was urgent, messy, breathless. We didn't make love. We just tried to feel something. I wanted to feel wanted. He wanted to feel chosen. And for a few moments, we gave each other exactly that. Afterward, the silence was deafening. One chose. I laid there staring at the ceiling while he ran his fingers through my hair like it meant something. And then he said it. "I've been in love with you for years." I didn't respond. Not because I didn't hear him, but because I didn't feel the same. It wasn't love for me. It wasn't even about Dylan. It was about being seen, being touched, being reminded that I was still a woman, not just a role. Later that night after he left, I sat on the edge of the tub for what felt like hours. The bathroom light was off, just the moonlight slipping in through the small window. I undressed, stepped into the shower, let the water run hot over my skin, and I cried, not because I regretted it, but because I didn't. After that night, something shifted. Dylan changed. The easygoing charm he always carried turned into something needier, more intense. He started texting more. Good mornings, good nights, little check-ins all day long. He'd ask how I was feeling, what I was thinking, if I missed him. He'd stop by unannounced with some excuse, dropping off something Mark left in his car, checking on the back gate, offering to help with dinner. At first, I tried to respond gently, tried to stay calm, tried to keep control over something that had already broken loose, but the weight of it started growing too fast. And Mark. He didn't say much, but I could feel it. He started watching me differently. His hugs felt stiffer, his silences longer. There were pauses in his sentences like he was trying to catch something between the words, but he didn't know what. Not yet. I began pulling away from Dylan, saying I was busy, delaying texts, not answering the door right away. And he felt it. He started accusing me, soft at first, then sharper. "You're acting like it didn't mean anything," he said one night over the phone. And I didn't know what to say, because for him, it meant everything. And for me, it was a moment. A powerful, confusing, selfish moment, but still, just a moment. I didn't want to lose my marriage, I told him. I just wanted to remember who I was. But that wasn't enough for him. One night, around 9 p.m., he showed up at my front door, uninvited, drunk. His eyes were glassy, his words slurred, but full of pain he wasn't trying to hide anymore. "You used me," he said. "You knew what I wanted." He stepped closer, his voice raised. His heart was bleeding all over my front porch, and I stood there, frozen, ashamed, and terrified, and exhausted. I begged him to lower his voice, told him the kids were asleep, even though they weren't even home. But it didn't matter, because just then, the front door opened wider, and Mark stepped into the hallway. He didn't say a word. He just stood there, staring at the two of us, like a puzzle he suddenly realized had been missing pieces all along. Dylan went quiet, looked down, mumbled something that didn't matter. And Mark, he didn't yell, didn't ask a single question. He just turned around, walked back through the house, and closed the bedroom door behind him. That silence was the loudest thing I've ever heard. I never imagined I'd be the villain in my own story, but that's what I became. Not with some grand betrayal, not with evil intentions or calculated lies, just with need, loneliness, and a hunger to be seen. I've replayed it all 100 times in my head. The first glance that lingered too long. The first time I dressed with him in mind. The first text I answered when I should have left it alone. And I keep trying to pinpoint the exact moment it all shifted, but maybe it didn't. Maybe it was never one moment. Maybe it was me. Maybe I was the one who changed, who stopped asking for what I needed and started searching for it somewhere else. Some days I wake up and wonder who I became during those months. That version of me, the one who said yes to attention like it was oxygen, she feels distant now. But she's still me. Mark never asked me for an explanation. He didn't scream, didn't accuse. He just retreated. A few days after that night, he moved into the guest room, started coming home later, stopped kissing my forehead in the mornings. I don't know if he'll ever ask what really happened, and I don't know if I'd even know how to explain it. What do you say? I didn't mean to fall. I just got tired of standing alone. There's no version of this where I come out clean. No excuse that makes it okay. And Dylan? He moved away a few months later, got a job in another city, didn't say goodbye. I haven't heard from him since. No calls, no texts, not even a forwarded address. Maybe he finally understood that he was chasing a ghost, not love, but the illusion of it. And me? I wasn't in love with Dylan. I was in love with the version of myself I saw through his eyes, the version that was still desirable, still alive, still worth noticing. It's strange how quickly a moment can change your reflection, how a single choice, one yes, can echo louder than all the quiet years before it. I look in the mirror now and wonder if Mark still sees me, or just the shadow of who I used to be. The truth is, I don't know if he'll ever trust me again, and I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive myself. But I do know this: I didn't cheat because I stopped loving my husband. I cheated because I stopped feeling like someone worth loving. And that is a truth I'll carry quietly for the rest of my life. Have you ever made a choice you couldn't take back and didn't even know if you wanted to? Not out of spite, not out of hate, but out of emptiness, out of the quiet ache of feeling invisible for too long. Was it emotional cheating? Was I just lonely? Or did I cross a line that should never have existed in the first place? I still don't know. Some days, I convince myself it was a moment. Other days, It feels like a fracture that runs deeper than I thought I could ever fall. But I wonder, have you ever been torn between what's right and what makes you feel alive again? Have you ever looked in the mirror and barely recognized the person staring back, but felt relieved someone else finally did? If you've ever stood at the edge of something forbidden, if you've ever held guilt and longing in the same breath, please tell me I'm not alone. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Say what you couldn't say to anyone else, because sometimes the hardest stories are the ones we never meant to live. And if this one touched something in you, if it made you think, made you feel, made you remember, then I hope you'll subscribe to Shocking Infidelity Saga. This is where we peel back the layers of the human heart, one story at a time. Sometimes desire wears the face of connection. It feels warm, familiar, safe, but the cost may be everything you thought you were protecting. I gave in to a moment not because I stopped loving my husband, but because I stopped recognizing myself in his eyes. And I've been living in the shadow of that moment ever since. So, if you're feeling unseen, if the silence in your home is louder than any fight ever could be, don't go looking for light in someone else's fire. You might burn more than just yourself. You might burn everything that ever kept you grounded. And once it's gone, you'll never be able to stand in that same light again.